My man crush Idris Elba has taken on criminals, special agents, even demigods, but now he's confronting the king of the jungle in Beast. So is this movie 90 minutes of insanity or stupidity? A father and his two teenage daughters find themselves hunted by a massive rogue lion, intent on proving that the Savanna has only one apex predator. This is a taut thriller from director Baltasar Kormákur, who has also given us Everest, Two Guns, and Adrift. Now, he's great at creating tension and excitement within his stories, and in this, the minimal cast with a semi-contained location is what helps to enhance the anxiety of this. Now, in addition to Idris Elba, we have Sharlto Copely, Leah Jeffries, and Iyana Halley. Now, Elba and his daughters are visiting where his wife was from in kind of this journey to reconnect with his daughters and then kind of patch up some past hurts. I had said this is a semi-contained location, even though it takes place on this massive wildlife preserve. It feels very small because of how isolating the terrain is. Okay, so let's get this out of the way up front. The CGI with the lions, it is a mixed bag in quality. Now, sometimes the animals pass for real, but there are several sequences, especially when they're interacting with humans, where the graphics look very fake and unbelievable. And at one point, it almost looks like a person's hand and arm. They just kind of go through part of the lion's head. Now, I chose not to focus on these flaws too deeply, just in an effort to stay immersed in the narrative, but it would be very easy to get distracted when the effects look poor because the realism is then shattered for the sequence. Now, I love that this story gets straight to the point. Once our characters arrive and then get settled, the very next morning they head off on safari, and that's when all hell begins to break loose. Now, before this happens, though, we do get glimpses into the character relationships, showcasing where elements are strained, as well as gaining insight into their beliefs and mindsets. And while we get some background on the characters right at the start of the story, there are some behaviors that Elba exhibits that make him less of a sympathetic character. He comes across as detached and even antagonistic to his daughters, which then makes me question whether or not I should root for him. Thankfully, though, as the movie progresses, he does soften in his approach, and he does become one that we want to see succeed. And I also like that he's an everyman within the movie. He's afraid a lot of the time, and he's ill-equipped to deal with the extreme situations that he finds himself in. And this helps to add some realism to the narrative, which then engaged me even further in the story because he becomes more relatable. Now, the locations are spectacularly beautiful, and we get to see a wide variety of landscapes here. From plains that are scattered with trees and animals just running about, to these craggy mountains where boulders jut out in treacherous angles. And we even get to see some swampy areas where the water looks anything but inviting. And actually, as I looked at it, it made my skin crawl at the thought of what could be lurking beneath the surface. Ugh. Once the locations help to establish the lonely tone, the camera work is phenomenal and it's totally immersive. There are so many scenes that are long, continuous takes, which follow our characters through all sorts of areas, sometimes passing the areas to then spin around and then capture them from a different angle, is what also then allows us to see character movements and reactions that are happening within the background that we hadn't seen previous. Now, this technique made it feel like we were watching the events play out in real time, which then creates a bunch of anxiety and even apprehension. There are times when the characters encounter disturbing visuals, which then leads us to believe that there is some imminent peril and danger, and this is then enhanced by that never-stopping movement of the camera. While this sounds like it could be a bit hard to watch, the majority is not shaky cam, even though it's following through twists and turns of the locations. I was floored at how enveloping the camera technique was at that, putting us right alongside of our characters in a way that we can feel their terror and their stress. Now, the plot is fairly simple and therefore believable as we watch just this family who happens to be in the right spot at the very wrong time. And yeah, there are a lot of conveniences built in to give massive plot protection to our characters. Many times throughout the stories, our characters, they just should be more harmed based on the situations, yet they're mostly still able to move about. And there are points, though, that seem like a situation is fairly dire, and I like that the story just makes us sit with it for an extended period of time in order to increase the suspense. I think this is a fun watch for a bit of escapism. Is it the absolute best action thriller? No, of course not. But I don't think it's going to disappoint, especially if you hit it up at a matinee. So overall, Beast features immersive camera work with long, continuous takes to place us in the middle of the action. And while the CGI is varied in how good it looks, the stress and anxiety of the real-time feel of the story accomplish its goal and then create an exciting and taut thriller. There's no sex or nudity, a bunch of profanity, and a ton of violence. I give Beast 3.5 out of 5 couches. So are there any animal thrillers that you love? Let me know what they are in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris, This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.